Hi, church. I was in seminary when Facebook was really starting to take off. A friend of mine who happened to be a classmate was applying for a position at a church nearby. He was super qualified. He would have done a great job. But after the interview with some people from the church, he received a phone call from someone on the interview panel. This person told him that he should take down a few of the pictures from his Facebook profile, to do it right away. There's nothing inappropriate there, but the person on the other end suggested that they could cause some concern or give the church a reason not to hire him. Now, that kind of thing is common sense for most of us now, but at the time it was surprising that people would look at social media when making hiring decisions. And sometimes when reading the Bible, I come across these heroes of faith and I think, wow, this person would never get hired. And take the Apostle Paul, for example. Imagine him in an interview. Okay, Mr. of Tarsus. It says here you were brought up in this city at the feet of Gamaliel. Oh, that's impressive. You were taught according to the strictness of the Father's law and was zealous towards God as we all are today. That's very good. It says you persecuted this way to the death, binding and delivering into prison both men and women. Well, thank you for your time. We'll be in touch. In our world, we are always trying to appear better than we are, to diminish and disassociate ourselves from, even bury the errors of our past. The Apostle Paul didn't do that. He didn't avoid his past or hide from it. He led from it. Luke was a co-laborer with Paul. He was a friend of Paul's, in addition to being the author of Luke Acts. So when he says at the beginning of chapter 9, meanwhile, Saul was still breathing out murderous threats against the Lord's disciples, who do you think the phrase murderous threats came from? And can't you picture Luke? Hey, Paul, why don't we lighten up on the language a little bit? You are one of the leaders of the early church. Not a chance. Print it, Paul says. On 3 occasions in Acts, plus in Paul's own letters to the Galatians, Corinthians, and Philippians, we hear of Paul's persecution of the church. Now, why does he continue to bring it up? Because he wasn't concerned with his own reputation. He was concerned with accomplishing the task to which God sent him, proclaiming the gospel of God's grace through the lordship of his Son. It's as if every time he told his story, he was telling everyone within earshot, if God's grace is great enough for me, it's great enough for you. But before any of that, he had to experience the revelation that he was on the wrong path. And he went to the high priest and asked him for letters to the synagogues in Damascus, so that if he found any there who belonged to the way, whether men or women, he might take them as prisoners to Jerusalem. As he neared Damascus on his journey, suddenly a light came from heaven and flashed around him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice say to him, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? Who are you, Lord? Saul asked. I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. He replied, now get up and go into the city, and you will be told what you must do. The men traveling with Paul stood there speechless. They heard the sound, but did not see anyone. Saul got up from the ground, but when he opened his eyes, he could see nothing. So they led him by the hand into Damascus. For 3 days he was blind and did not eat or drink anything. And can you imagine what that must have been like? The realization that it was all true. That his zeal for God had actually set him against God. He's a broken man. I don't think any of us have been guilty of persecuting the church. But in order to do the work God calls us each to do, we've got to have our own Damascus moment. Isn't it ironic that God blinded Paul in order that he could finally see his sins and his rebellion? I pray that God would give us all the same eyes to see, not to come under condemnation, but as we see the depths of our depravity, that we might also see, that we might also experience the full extent of God's grace. Have a blessed week, church.